Good morning, everyone. This is Kathy Mason from MasonWorks Marketing here on Conscious Business Zone with my new friends, Katie Darling and Greg Andrews. Hi, guys.
Hi.
I'm so glad to meet you, and I'm so glad to have this conversation about a way to expand your awareness to the bigger picture of who and what we are, and how to live in a much more exciting and fun way.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really, I think that was the plan for this game, but but anyway, so I wanted to start with you two, if I could, to find out about how you guys met and how all of this started with you two, and then we can really go deep into all of the iWAVE stuff.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. So,
Can I start?
yeah, you can start.
Okay. Well, I've always been kind of a religious person. I was born in the South, religious South, and as I grew older, I realized that it wasn't quite right for me. I became more metaphysical, and in college, I read a book called Seth Speaks, and I also read a book called Life After Life, and it really changed my perspective of life. And I joined the military as an officer, and even though I was in the military, I realized it was not congruent with what I had learned in those two books as being a part of a, a machine that was really there to take lives. And I realized that I'm not here to take lives. I'm more here to enhance people's lives. And so even though I was in the military, I realized I couldn't stay there. I couldn't rationalize it any longer. And I got out after I got my MBA degree. I got out as a captain, and I entered into the corporate world. And I realized it was almost as cutthroat as the military. And so I realized this is not for me either. I read lots of books, and my consciousness had changed. I studied metaphysical studies and Course in Miracles and all kinds of things that really changed the way I viewed the world, my perspective. And when I was in the corporate world, I realized that this is not really what I want to do either, because my mystical leanings really didn't allow me to excel the way I wanted to, and it kind of really ruined my military career, but also my corporate career. So I was really in a quandary. Then in 2006, a catastrophe happened because of a prior military incident or an accident. I lost my vision, my sight completely, and this was the time I realized, okay, this is the time. I have an opportunity here. I've studied metaphysical teachings. I've done mystical teachings. I'm going to take this time and see if God or consciousness or the universe really does provide if you go all in. And so that summer I went all in. I just sat and meditated and studied and thought. And it didn't happen overnight. I was still in a dark night of the soul. I was still struggling, but all of a sudden, things began to change. I received compensation for the military for my eyes. I got Social Security, and what happened was I got supply not only for that moment, but for life. And eventually, I moved to Savannah, Georgia. I was a mystic. I was like a lone mystic in Savannah, Georgia. And in 2020, I met Katie Darling. Now, this was really
That's me.
That's you, of course. And that really changed my life because even though I was in the consciousness of metaphysics and mysticism, I hadn't gotten into the wave function. And when I met Katie, she took me out of the yin fashion and just being still and motionless, and brought me into the idea that there's energy involved too. And so I began getting involved with Katie, and we did our wave practices together. And I was mainly yin, and she was mainly yang, but she brought me out into the yang portion of it. And now together, we're doing both. So I look at myself as the anchor for Katie, because she, and also like the base, the foundation, she soars. And when I go deeper, she soars, and she can take us with her. So that's why I'm here today, to support her, number one. And number two, just to realize that we can go further together. And we have this wave motion that we have together that we are changing the world bit by by person. And I think because of what we've accomplished, so we've got a long way to go, but we can do it, and we will do it.
Save the world.
Yes.
Well, I love this because what you're saying is that so many people have studied. I've read all the Seth books, the Abraham Hicks work, the Neil Donald Walsh. I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of books out there, Law of One, that give you an intellectual concept of it, but they don't actually give you an experience and a heart opening like what you guys are doing. So I think there's a lot of people that are going to relate to what you said, Greg, about it, that they've touched it, but they can't quite figure out how to integrate it so it's usable in this play field, in this game, right?
Absolutely, because even though I lost my sight in Savannah, I had another awakening when I got together with Katie. So it was like, I was blind, but now I see. I really do see.
Isn't that cool? And
Yeah.
and the thing is that you were set up so that everything worked out perfectly for you to have this next phase. That's the true trust and knowing of the universe where you can create your reality. You did a great reality creating, actually.
It was pretty amazing. I was really shocked and amazed that it does work when you really, but it's 100% commitment. You can't go halfway. And
Right.
once you do that, then things change. And it may not happen like immediately, but it does work. And I can attest to that.
Oh, yeah, perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Well, again, this is a time period where I'm hoping as many people as possible will wake up to their divinity, and your trust and your guidance from both of you could really help so many people in that aspect, because the more that we wake up to who we really are versus the programs that we are, that we appear to adopt until we don't, then there's an opportunity for huge change in the world, because we're going to that new human. Barbara Marx Hubbard called the new human Homo Universalis.
Yes.
And to go from this warring, competitive business environment, which I saw the oneness a long time ago, and I've been doing this show for 7 years.
Wow.
Yeah, because I see the opportunity of business being the leadership in the change, rather than drug along at the end. So, well, thank you so much, Greg. And Katie, do you want to tell a little bit of your journey? Is quite remarkable. I got to listen to some of your YouTube. So, Katie, thank you, Greg. And Katie, do you want to share some right
Sure.
now?
I'm totally being spontaneous right now. So, well, how I met Greg is a big part of it. I was coming out of my third great awakening. I'm 74 years old, by the way. And how I met Greg was that I had been for 16 years single in 2020 at the beginning of lockdown. And I had decided after my previous relationship, which ended in a sort of dark night of the soul for me, I decided to just, in the same way that he threw everything on source or on consciousness and stopped trying to make things happen, I decided that I actually had to stop trying to manifest a partner, because my previous manifestation, although at first the partnership had seemed ideal, it eventually brought up an incredible shadow level of human experience that I couldn't have even dreamed of, without going into gory details. It's like, where was that in my consciousness? I've been in the path since I was 18, and the terrible stuff happened. And so I just decided to really throw it onto the divine. And it took a while because everybody kept telling me, look, you have to hustle. You have to, get out and get seen. You have to go online. You have to market yourself online. You have to sell yourself online. You have to go on lots of dates. And my guidance was telling me something different, which was that I needed to do the mystical practice, which was to know that God, let's call it just for short, knows already who is my ideal partner, knows the desires of my heart, and is bringing him in right timing and something much greater than I could manifest from my, wish list. Because I didn't actually have blind black mystic on my list. I was thinking of somebody kind of more like me, and yet it couldn't be more radically perfect than to be with this divine enlightened being. So but after we met on a Zoom at opposite sides of the country in a mystical webinar that we both went to just for fun separately, and we met, and within a month we were living together and very soon married. And so I got married again at 70. So women, men out there, it's literally never too late. We don't believe in the whole aging story. It's never too late.
Perfect. I love that. Well, yeah, and I really think what we're seeing now is that with people being aware that frequency is the language, and awareness can be in an instant, as long as you trust it. So,
Yeah.
so how do you suggest people trust that intuition that they get?
The thing is, what are you trusting? Right? So there's a whole possibility of trusting in hard work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like whacking the beast, getting sort of, stay up all night or stay online all day doing marketing. Greg is stepping aside to meditate to support this session. So staying up all night, staying all day on your screen and going on all the social media, to find a man, to find a woman, to find customers, to find likes, like as though a person is the number of likes that they have. So that's the kind of material approach, even though it's now online. It's the material approach, which, I used to call whacking the beast. You can get there faster if you whack your body, if you push, if you totally believe in the material world as being the cause of your hope, of your experience. And the thing is, it's a very strong veil. We come into this world and we have these senses and we have this world thought, which is different than earth. I call world the habitat of thought that we're born into, and the culture and the cult and the, the sort of, you could call it the matrix, but that not in a kind of conspiratorial way. And we get born into that. And we also have these senses that tell us that matter is real. And we have this probably ancestral stuff that causes certain genes to be firing. And we are kind of in a box. And it sure looks like you have to plow the fields and, whack the beast and go for your likes and all that material stuff. And to some degree, of course, you do, until you start realizing, oh, a lot of the things that I was doing physically, I could do with the intelligence of my mind. And you move into more of a mental world where perhaps you're just organizing other people to do stuff or having great ideas. And that's how you're living. And then maybe you get into metaphysical, where you start to maybe get into law of attraction, as it's now called, but it's been called metaphysics since the second half of the 19th century. And, what we call law of attraction was actually expressed in exactly the same way in the 1890s. But it's been going on for a long time. The metaphysical path is very powerful. You start to realize, oh my God, I can, to some degree, create realities by the law of attraction or the law of assumption or feeling like it's already happening. So I was already doing that. I had been doing that since I was about 30. When this sort of disaster happened with my last marriage, which took me into a dark night of the soul, I had been doing a lot of creating my own reality. And I had, in fact, created a school, which was the beginning of iWAVE Institute, my school. This was in the late 90s of the 1990s. And I had 5,000 students over about 20 years. And I did most of it metaphysically, that I just knew after many decades of practicing it that you get what you expect. But then everything came to this ghastly sort of, you might say, life lesson of going into the dark night of the soul where everything stopped working. So now the way I understand it is, yes, it's great to go past the material, always including what you're going past. You don't give it up, but you include it and you transcend it. So you go from the material approach to life, you go into the mental as you kind of evolve, and then you go into the metaphysical, which seems like the ultimate. Except, have you noticed it doesn't always work? It does work. You can manifest perhaps a red car. And I certainly manifested my previous relationship through very strong mental work. But sooner or later, you're going to come to the end of what your personal sense of identity can manifest. And then the divine, compassionate source that, we agreed to come here in concert with that, with our guidance, with our divine guidance, it will then bring us to the next step, which would be to be able to be in total peace and to have things manifest in an abundant flow, not just a monk as I was in my 20s, actually, but to be in an abundant flow of good in all areas of life. So love, wealth, health, life purpose, community might be a fifth. To be able to be in an abundant flow and to have it really happen without that strenuous struggle and effort of trying. Because if you're really, really trying, it means that deep down you think that you're here alone and that you're here, that if I don't do it, nobody else will do it for me. There isn't a divinity. And I think that our level of stress and anxiety and hustle can either be something that we love doing, or it can be a reflection of a place where we feel separate from source. And so the very experience of my life, kind of just like Greg going blind, pushed him deep from metaphysics into mysticism, in fact. And we actually met through a webinar that was about a teaching that we both particularly like, which very mystical. And so then I kind of went mystical. And I just believed, what Yeshua said, which is seek first the kingdom of heaven, which is within, and all these other things will be added unto you. And what are the other things? Even he kind of said it like this, what you will eat and wherewithal you shall live, and a roof over your head and what you will wear, and, love, wealth, health, life purpose. Can you actually dare to seek first the kingdom of heaven within and just watch as everything manifests? It doesn't mean you won't work. You might work harder than ever. But that mental stress of the lone human, trying to survive in the apocalyptic world is released.
Right.
And that's what our work is how to make it across that. Because most people we work with already have done some law of attraction and have done, all kinds of courses on how to get clients or how to get work. But how about this new initiation that the world is going through, which is into what we call new wave mystics, not new age mystics. New age is more like metaphysical, but new wave mystics, where we're marrying the incredible understandings that have come before us of the mystics and the metaphysicians, but we're marrying it with the energy of, you might call it, the feminine side of God, because all those teachings are very oriented towards the mind and actually the left brain. And they miss out the Kundalini, the Shakti, the energy in the body, that comes when you open up your breath and you open up the natural flow of what people call chi, but I just call it the wave, the infinite wave, that when it's allowed to fully flow through not only your body, which everyone takes for granted. Oh yeah, I go to my yoga class, I go to my qigong class, but how about all day, that this wave of infinite energy that creates the universe, that is creating us right now, what about if that were to get married to the I am consciousness that is trying to create realities? Because if you create them all in your imagination, you mostly get them in your imagination.
Right.
If that I is married to your wave connection, then you get this sweet spot where I and wave, sometimes called Shiva and Shakti, or the god and the goddess, are actually together as one flowing dynamic power. So that was what I was doing. I was going very deep into the merging of those two. And then Greg kind of appeared out of the quantum field from nowhere. And before I knew it, he was living with me and we were married. And it was absolutely something that I remembered from forever, that he was my partner, even though I had thought that every one of my many partners was my soulmate. This was beyond that. This was the one that the universe would give me if I 100% could trust the universe. And it's not easy, but it's quite simple.
Well, when you age, you seem to have a perspective that makes you more self-assured about everything. And then if you trust that you have angels and guides, or the divine has your back, and that is actually what I think a lot of people are experiencing or being called to experience now.
Yes.
You've said so many things I could ask questions about, but one of the things I wanted to ask you about for my audience is, you have talked about your experience in the 80s and the 90s, where you were doing samadhi and you were connecting with the divine on a regular basis, but then you realized that you had to connect to the earth.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because, that's key.
Well, what actually happened was that to kind of give that a little context, I was raised by British physicist atheists, but I was also raised in a very traumatic household where my parents had been, as physicists, they had been drafted to work on the bomb in World War II, what they call in America the Manhattan Project. My parents were in the British version of that. And my father especially was very prominent in that. And so when Hiroshima happened, and we're going back to the 40s before I was born, but this bomb was dropped in Hiroshima that didn't need to happen. It was testing and killed hundreds of thousands of people. And my parents were so shocked that the anti-nuclear movement ended up pretty much starting in our living room. And so as I was born into this atmosphere of impending doom that a lot of people are living in now, having been living the American dream in some version. And I'm mostly probably talking to Americans, which you can probably tell I wasn't originally American, but now I kind of talk like this. And so most people had been living in, either they were living the American dream or they were trying to live the American dream and believing that it was available if you just tried harder. And now a lot of people are living in a consciousness of apocalypse. But I was kind of born into the consciousness that the apocalypse was happening back then in the 50s and 60s, because my parents were aware of the Cold War and nuclear proliferation. And so and plus the nuclear family melted down and my parents got divorced. And it was the only family in my entire year at school where the parents got divorced. And so when I was 18, I had a massive spiritual awakening without any drugs. I was actually the only hippie I knew that wasn't taking drugs because I was so sensitive. And I went from being atheist to completely knowing that there is a God and that it's personal. It's not just universe or quantum field that my parents might have possibly talked about, but that it's a personally loving force. It was like an NDE, which is why we speak at the NDE conferences, because both of us have had spiritually transformative experiences that were equivalent to an NDE in that they were like a walk-in experience. So at 18, I suddenly went from being my parents' child, very atheist, very clever, and suddenly being in this kind of devotional ecstasy and not knowing what to do with my life. And I ended up dropping out of my psychology degree and joining a spiritual group as a monk, and a complete monk, like full vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience through my 20s. So people think if I just would meditate a bit more, then I would get peace. Believe me, 12 years of hours of meditation and service and being in satsang and traveling the world, teaching meditation and teaching talking about God. It was so much going up. And around the age of 30, I crashed down. I realized I was actually in a cult. And although there was a lot of spiritual truth that was being experienced, there was also a leader who had ever increasing numbers of Rolls Royces and yachts while we were, losing all our money and all our life energy in order to support a typical narcissistic guru. So I left the cult and I kind of crashed down into, you could say the earth, but I would say my buy-in to the earth is my body and my emotional body and all of the stuff that I hadn't been dealing with by going up, up, up into these ecstatic meditational experiences, and which I was definitely having. But I was completely ignoring the pain body, as Eckhart Tolle brilliantly called it. And so I crashed back down into the body, and I got really sick, and all of these mystery illnesses, which I've actually figured out how they can be healed, but are very common among people who are empaths. And I'm mega empathic, which I'm not boasting about. It's an incredible, it makes life very challenging. But it also makes certain skills unravel that are needed on the earth right now. So probably a lot of people listening are empaths, and we're very sensitive to everything. But also the good news is we're very sensitive to everything. And so I came out of that and I learned rebirthing, which was the beginning of breath work. And I started realizing I knew how to be a hypnotherapist just from having one hypnotherapy session. I realized I must have done this before. And I became a coach. I suppose it was a coach. Everyone called me their therapist. And just working on transforming people, both in the body, well, not both, in the body and in the emotions and in the beliefs, the metaphysical level, and in the connection to the infinity, to God, which, God, goddess, all it is. But God's a nice short word. And I think most people have gotten over the patriarchal projection and trigger from that word, because I think we need to take it back. So yeah, I went up, 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 and then I came down, 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 down. And then I had another awakening in my 40s where I had been very successful, actually. I always had a waiting list for clients and for the seminars I was doing. But then I got really tired and I had all these symptoms and I was broke for about 9 months. This was I was about 45, 46. And after several months in bed, and it was actually 9 months that I was in bed, and the rent was due, and it was very, very, very challenging. And I just kept surrendering, and I kept surrendering. And I had another awakening where I was carried into a universe where everything was waves. My body started to move into spontaneous waves. My emotions started to be able to move through my body as waves instead of as agonizing, stuck feelings of pain like anxiety or sadness or anger, resentment, the three kinds of emotions. They started to be able to move through my body. My thoughts were able to be informed from higher consciousness in waves. So waves of thought would come to me. And then, well, it went on for 3 days, and I realized how everything works. It was like the biggest spiritual awakening of my life so far. And that included a lot of full stillness and silence and oneness experiences, especially when I was a monk. And a lot of big Kundalini experiences when I was working with breath and the body in my 30s. And so they all came together. And I started teaching because a download started, and it's still happening right now. That download started, I guess, when I was 45, and I'm now 74. And for the last nearly 30 years, this download of realizations about anything that where it's needed has been coming through me. And it's not personal. It's, I could say that it's the guides and higher consciousness speaking through me, but it definitely is woven in and integrated with my personal experience. I only teach what I've been able to prove with my very challenging lives. When I say lives, I mean, in one lifetime, a spirit guide once told me I've had 200 lifetimes. And the number of incredibly challenging things that have happened that I've had to work through. And instead of becoming bitter and twisted and, building up these layers of resentment and hopelessness and sort of victim consciousness, which is a great temptation and on a bad day can definitely flare up, but that I've been able to work through those with skillful means of this iWAVE practice that I've kind of invented, and keep being new every day. So now we call ourselves New Wave Mystics, Greg and I, and we're inviting a collective to be with us as New Wave Mystics. It's not a cult, and it's not a tribe. It could be anyone who is feeling that there's a kind of a new wave of mysticism arising through the earth, which is for everyone. It's not just love for your tribe who are all really cool or all hippies or all, some sort of conspiracy freaks, but everybody who is feeling an awakening wants it to be both in the body, and of course that connects directly to the earth, and also to be connected to all of the higher help that is really waiting to be channeled through us. And when those two come together, when an awareness of the incredible ecstatic fluidity of the earth, of this planet, which we call Terra, but it should be called Aqua. If you see it from space, it's obviously all made of water and waves, and our body is all made of water and waves. And then there's that fire and that air, or, I'm just making this up, actually. It's not a system of cookie cutter ideas, but there's this higher consciousness that kind of comes in and combines with this incredible realm called the earth, and a new thing gets born. It's like the Trinity, you get the mother and the father and the child.
Mhm.
And this new wave of humanity that you were talking about, the new human, that Barbara Marx Hubbard talked about. And, one of the things I love about futurists like Barbara Marx Hubbard is that they understand that life is teleological, which means that the telos, the goal, is pulling us towards itself like a magnet. In chaos theory, it's called a strange attractor. And we don't have to fight our way through the evil stuff that is happening in the world. We have to tune our consciousness and bodies towards this attractor in our so-called future. In time, it's in our future on this earth, which is the new expression of integrated, loving humanity, where transparencies for the love, which is all it is.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That helps so many people see that they are capable of having a similar experience that you have, and that it's time to test the waters and see how to do that. So I wanted to ask, because a lot of the people that listen to my show are servant leaders. They do their best to provide a growing and loving environment for their employees as well as for their customers. Yes. But a lot of times they don't have that much time, or they don't spend as much time on themselves as they do putting it out. And you did talk about empathics and sensitives. A lot of the people listening to this are also, like me, very sensitive. What do you see as far as connecting to the iWAVE? How do you see people that are already aware of a bigger playing field than most, and may have a little bit of trouble with all the chaos in the global consciousness? They might be picking up on it more than they'd like.
Yes.
What do you feel is a good help for them right now?
Most of my clients, I would say, they call themselves HSPs or empaths, or they're servant leaders. Exactly. I work with a lot of people who are coaches, or I have a lot of business owners that have been my clients, and big businesses too. Like one is an $85 million business, and yet the anxiety that this client was experiencing, even though, he's going to be okay for the rest of his life as far as finances are concerned, but there's still that sensitivity to what seems to be a lot of crossfire. If you're experiencing the world right now horizontally, then there's a lot of crossfire from the mass consciousness thought forms, and they're pretty intense. Nobody needs to even talk about it. And basically what we need is a way of moving, in a sense, horizontally. So moving into a consciousness that is horizontal, but not horizontal where you're just going up to, the divine, like all of the obsession with, leaving the body, or what I did when I was a monk, which go up, infinitely up, not only open this chakra, but this one and this one and this one. Yeah, you can do that. But then if you don't equal and opposite go down and build the roots of being an energetic mystic and being connected to source. So how I work with people is having them wake up what I call the infinite wave in their body, in their breath, and also in their consciousness, their mind. And when those come together, as I said, it's so synergistically more powerful than you go over here and you try and correct your thoughts, and you go over here and you try and do some movement that will, keep your body flowing, and you go over here for something really spiritual. It's all the one. Whatever you call it, Allah, God, Jesus, Buddha, and all these names, the one, beingness, there's only one of it. So let's just call it the one, like in the law of one, they call it the one, right? If it's one, then from my point of view, the method for merging in it has to be one. You can't just have one place. Well, you can, and you can cobble it all together. And I was cobbling it all together. But then I started to realize it's all one kind of gesture. This infinite wave expresses itself as incredibly positive, mystical thinking, which has no opposite. And it expresses itself as a self-healing body. And I can really talk to this because I've had so many times when it seemed like my body was manifesting stuff that was so extreme it was going to take me out, with diagnoses and everything. So to be able to manifest a self-renewing body and self-renewing thought and self-renewing emotions, which is actually the big shadow where everybody tries to bypass it, to be able to get all those to be one. So that's how I work with people. iWAVE, I can't just teach it in this one podcast, but I can say that it does exist. There is a methodology where these can all become one. And if nothing else, if you're listening to this and you're struggling with your manifestation, with being overwhelmed by life, your kids, your work, your employees, your relationships, then just take a moment. Well, right now, let's take a moment and tune into the fact that you can fall back into the already flowing river of, first of all, breath. So there is something breathing the universe, right? And in fact, there is no universe. There is no noun. There is no particle. There is only breathing. The universe is actually pulsating and breathing right now. So we might call that going down, going into the earth, but it's not just the earth, it's the entire universe. It's the whole spectrum from matter to energy. And that is like our mother that takes care of us, that supplies us. And then there's our emotions. So what we really want is to be happy. The whole of America was founded on that, right? So that loving wave that is breathing us, and see if you can just keep falling back into it. I'm not saying breathe, motherfuckers, like some people do in the modern, very masculine breathwork approach, but fall back into that continuous wave of breath. And it's not just a wave of breath. I'm noticing I keep waving my arms around, but your whole body is actually pulsating. So let it just wave a little bit as you're listening. And then just know that you are completely guided, and guided is provided. And that there is a golden timeline for your life where God Goddess, all it is, knows you personally. And it's not dependent on what anyone else is doing, what's happening in politics or economics or your family or your work. It's only dependent on one source. And that source is your connection to this one. You could say that the source is the one, but the one was there all along and you were feeling disconnected and frantic. So the actual source is your live connection, your live streaming connection to this one. That is, everybody who's had a near-death experience comes and tells us, and Greg and I, who have had spiritually transformative experiences, can tell us that it's only love. If it's like a 3D printer that has printed out this whole visible and energetic universe, then the substance that it uses to create it all is love. Everything is love. And yet our thoughts have gone into duality, and we believe that love is the opposite of pain. and that, love is dangerous and is going to hurt us, and that even life is dangerous and is going to hurt us. And that's the matrix that we can melt. And we can wake up into the consciousness of love, of God in the bod. And the amazing thing is that when that awakening starts to happen, then all else is added onto us. I got my absolute ideal blissful partner when I was 70 without any kind of dating whatsoever. I never went online and tried to find a guy, and that was a miracle. And the same kind of way, I'm not on social media, barely, have a YouTube channel and a website. And yet I have a full practice, very well paid, where I coach people. It all comes from my connection to this source. But I'm not saying source up there. I'm saying source as an integration of consciousness, which includes mind, and energy, which includes matter.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, I want to share that I also had a major spiritually transformative experience where I saw all that is as a wave.
Wow.
And I was, it was almost like it was a river and I was a tributary off of it. And this body was like a teeny weeny little ant in this. The tributary was like a spotlight. And this, I came out of it going, oh, okay, this will work this time.
Wow.
And I still, 20 some years later, I still think of it every morning.
Yes.
So that integration of seeing yourself as a part of the whole and everyone else as that too. It's not just that I'm special.
Or at least everyone else is special.
Well, this whole creation, I mean, if you feel that this was a gift to have this experience, you have a whole different inner story going than this is you're a victim of it all. If you're a co-creator with the universe and expanding consciousness, it's like, oh boy, what do I get to do today? Oh, good, I get to talk to Katie Darling. And my interest in all of these beautiful conversations is getting the language. Your articulation is just fantastic of your experience, because I'm still trying to figure it all out, enjoying it, knowing it's real, but figuring out or being able to articulate it is not that easy for me.
Yes. Yeah, I think somebody said that the old habitat of all the species would be the savanna or the mountains or the jungles, but now the habitat is language. The habitat that humans live in is language. And, one of the first metaphysical books I think I read was Florence Scovel Shinn, Your Word is Your Wand.
Yeah, I love her work.
Yes, and many other similar teachers, right? And one thing that happened for me when I was very young was I speak no word of lack. So sometimes I have, you could say objectively, been in not just lack, but total zero. And nobody knows. And I don't even hardly know myself, because I'm not grumbling about it. I'm not, checking my balance or wondering how the next money is going to come. I really love the teaching of Yeshua. And, I was raised atheist and I'm not in any particular religion, but I'm kind of multi-mystic. And he said, take no thought for tomorrow, because your father, or daddy, actually he called him, knows what you need before you need it. Now that is the strange attractor, the chaotic strange attractor in our future that magnetically pulls us on a kind of carrier wave through the jungle, through the crossfire of all of the strange beliefs and rules of this, world we're in, it carries you through to your golden timeline. And there is a golden timeline for each of us. It's not for special people. One of the things I love in NDEs is that I've watched thousands of near-death experiences. I find it to be the most reliable scripture because the other ones come from different kind of headspaces. And one thing that very often people say is that I realized I was the most special being in the universe to Source or God or whoever they meet. That's the being of light. That's the one. And then they kind of giggle and they say, of course, I see that everyone else is also. But we don't want to beat ourselves up for wanting to be special. Because in fact, we are in the positive sense of special. Only I can do what only I can do, including suffer from certain issues that maybe the whole of humanity is suffering from, which I certainly have suffered appallingly in my life. It's been very hard to understand that in spite of positive thinking and service and, all this good stuff, I've had very challenging experiences. But I feel that by having gone through those challenging experiences, there's a kind of slipstream behind me where thousands of other people don't have to. Because not just because of me personally, Katie Darling, but because in the field of consciousness, there are places where there's kind of stuck energy. It might be dark matter in terms of that quality that they talk about in physics about the universe having this dark matter that they don't really know what it is. Well, maybe what it is the collective pain body, the ancestral pain body, the sort of this world where all this stuff is getting worked out by souls. Maybe, we have a part of it in ourselves. We have our own buy-in, our boots on the ground, our skin in the game, as they say. And by me going through what has come to me to experience and successfully going through it, not only do I create this slipstream where others can more easily go through it, but I'm also going directly towards that golden timeline, which becomes more and more obvious in my life. I mean, it's really amazing to know that you are destined to be happy.
Perfect. Yes. It's not fabulous. Well, the thing is that once you take responsibility for the shadow, which is coming up as judgments or thought forms that you have a program that this is the way it should be, rather than being open to the co-creation of the universe with you. But I think this whole year has just been one clearing after the other, after other, after other. And I hope that people are getting quicker and better at it and not beating themselves up as they're going through it, because the gift that they're doing by cleaning themselves up is fortifying this other pathway, right?
Yes, exactly. Yes. And I think when you realize that, then you don't feel so alone also.
Right.
And when you feel alone, you basically feel wrong.
Right. But I think that so many people now, the internet has allowed you to see patterns, and see that you don't have to choose what is being fed to you. You can create your own happiness, and happy is the new rich. Really,
right.
it is.
Yes, it is the new rich.
Yes. So we have about 5 more minutes. I would love to show your website real quick, and then also talk about your presentation coming up. Okay.
Sure.
So I'm going to add this to stage right now. Here we are. So you can tell me where you want me to navigate here.
Well, the website address is www.iwave.love. And
Perfect.
this is the intro, and this is a podcast I did for Ions that went viral. And then here are all of the options that you can get from us. On the top left, you see iWAVE therapy, which is what I do with people in private series of sessions. And I also work with couples. That's the top middle one, Shift for couples. It's romantic enlightenment. And then up top right, Greg is a healer, both spiritual and energetic, just as we've been talking about how those two come together as new wave mysticism. So it's not just spiritual, it's not just energetic. So he's done Reiki for 30 years, but he's also a spiritual healer who just through his connection with consciousness has miraculous effects on healing people if they're open. So that's kind of me. And then our couples work, mostly I work with couples and it's very intense. So, a lot of people who work with me as couples have done, years and years and years. Somebody was telling me last week, we've done like 20 years of therapy. And in just this cycle of sessions with you, we've broken through. So it is really breakthrough work. And it includes breathing and it includes feeling your feelings. And so then what else can I tell you about? Bottom left, there's a few videos on YouTube. That's pretty much our social media presence. And there's a tiny little blog and there's some testimonials. That's my friend Shakti Gawain, who before she died gave me a testimonial.
Wonderful.
And, there's a lot on the website.
Yes, well, we want to make sure that people know to go to iWAVE.love.
Yes.
And that's in the description and an easy link to just click.
Okay,
So
great.
but we also want to invite people to experience you in person at the IONS conference at the end of this month in Chicago. And I'm going to show that site in just a second. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you're going to be talking about while I go set that up?
Yes, the title of our talk, because the theme of IONS this year, and this year is 2025, the theme is 50 years of NDE, being out and about and known since Raymond Moody's book Life After Life in 1975. And our presentation is because we've both actually been listening to NDEs since that time. And, we're older, right? So we can really say 50 years of NDE literacy has shaped our spiritual path. And also, we're going to talk about how you can use the information, the mystical information that comes from the other side through NDEs as a large community, not just one teacher or one teaching, but it has an overall average message that you can't deny. And it's totally positive.
Yes.
Sometimes you get into NDEs and then your algorithm will show you these horrible apocalyptic clickbait, thumbnails on YouTube. And that's not what the message actually is from the other side. The message from the other side is that things are getting better and that how it appears is actually the illusion that we can dissolve. If we dissolve it in our own consciousness, we dissolve it gradually and maybe very quickly for many, many more people. And if they want to choose, as Law of One would say, if they want to choose service to self and fear, and that will continue somewhere in the universe. But there really is a massive awakening happening right now. And the NDE information coming through is all part of the divine plan, I think.
Yep.
So,
Yep, I agree totally with that. I want to make sure that we show the site. It's conference.ions.org. And as you can see, Dr. Raymond Moody will be there in person. There also will be Carolyn Miss, Bruce Grayson, Diane Powell, who did the telepathy tapes, and my buddy Mark Anthony. These people are just amazing, amazing people. And if you cannot come and meet everyone in person, want you to make sure that you go to conference.ians.org and sign up for the online version, because you will get a copy of all the recordings of all of the talks that they'll be recording. And instead of Netflix or watching some other series of videos, you can watch this and you will be uplifted. Just like Katie said, the opportunity for us to choose a loving new future that's co-creative and fun and happy is within our reach. And we are just, I believe that's why we came here at this time, is to be a part of it. So Katie, thank you so much.
Please do come to the IANS workshop, because we're on first on Thursday when there aren't so many people. So please come and sit either in front of your screen or in front of us to support us.
Yes. Well, the thing is it's a win-win-win-win-win. The whole experience of being around people that articulate their experience with the divine and try to live that in their 3D existence, it's transformative just being in that field.
It's like being in the new wave Earth now.
Yeah.
And it's really, and the Saturday night party is not to be missed. So if you can come in person, all the better.
Yes. So anyway, well, thank you so much, Katie. I look forward to talking to you again. We didn't even scratch the surface of all of your amazing capacity to help people. So I hope we do this again. But
and thank you for what you're doing, because it's absolutely beautiful what you're doing and how you do it.
Yeah, I love this. Well, I'm still learning, and I really appreciate helping as many people wake up to their divinity. Seriously, people in the audience, please share this. If you know somebody who's struggling and they really could use Katie's help, Katie and Greg's help, there's resistance to this wave is futile, and it is our destiny. So might as well jump right in and get an experience now that could transform your life and everyone around you. And
will transform your life.
Yes. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. And please share.
And like and share and comment.
Well, all of that would be great. Thank you, dear.